All right, so here we are at the Shine, which this week is AEW Dynamite. Second week on Max. First week had some hits and misses. I won't really go over it because we'll be here forever talking about it. What it did was set up most of what happened this week. So we kicked off the show with Will Ospreay versus Buddy Matthews, which it was predictably awesome. Buddy
Yeah, it was.
Matthews Buddy Matthews, I remember when he was in WWE under the Buddy Murphy name, and they tagged him as what was it? It was the the best kept secret,
Hmm.
and it is because he's so good, but like nobody talks about it because he's hardly ever in these positions where he has a chance to really showcase himself. That roster is stacked from top to bottom
Oh
with
yeah.
honestly just too many guys. The problem is most of them are super talented. And I don't really want to see any of them let go. So, yeah, Buddy Matthews finally had kind of a showcase. He did a few weeks ago against Adam Cole too. This match was better though because it had Will Ospreay in it, and he is the best wrestler currently working full time, full stop. Uh, Honestly, this one I could have taken 10 more minutes of this. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was great. Uh, Osprey wins. Running blade or hidden blade. But yeah, I mean, it was great. He got on the microphone afterwards, and they started uh, a story to kind of basically explain why the House of Black is going to break up in kayfabe, because the real reason is that Malachi Black probably isn't going to resign with AEW. So, I mean, you know what? Have him go back to WWE. His wife works there. Have him work with his wife. Like God, like go be with Zelina. Like it, have a million matches with Andrade again. It was great. It was great the first time in NXT. It'll be great on the main roster again. It's great. But he said, he even actually slipped up and called him Buddy Murphy at first. Oh, I hope they don't get sued. Um, um, but yeah, Matthews was really, really put over by Osprey on the mic afterwards, saying that I've wrestled you, I've wrestled Brody. You guys don't need to be in this group with Malachi Black. Basically, he's like, you don't need the House of Black. You can go do your own thing if you want to. You definitely got the talent. I'm glad to share the ring with you at any time. And he implied that he would even be his tag team partner. So I think that would be cool, honestly. Because if you're not going to strap up Will with a world title belt, you might as well have him tread water in the tag team, honestly. And Buddy Matthews, my God, like a lot of people make the comparison, like Buddy Matthews is like basically like budget Kenny Omega because they do a lot of the same kind of stuff in the ring. Like they do like a lot of the same moves, the knees and stuff like that. I think that that's a little mean, but given what happens at the end of this show, which I'll get to in a minute, it's kind of an enticing prospect to have Buddy Matthews, who's been described as that, possibly fitting into what they set up at the end of this show. So I think that, then maybe there's some legs there. It's at least an interesting thought. Um, from there, Private Party comes out. Love Private Party. So happy for them. They're finally getting this chance to shine. They have their little like, VIP section up there, and MVP comes out with the Hurt Syndicate. And he brings up, and I love when they bring continuity into this. He's like, this VIP thing, I did that. Like, I invented that. And it's true. The VIP Lounge for a while was a talk show that MVP hosted on SmackDown. Like, it was a great shout out. I love it because we've been conditioned so long. Like you hear interviews with people like Adam Copeland and Jericho and people like that with when they talk to Chris Van Vliet or whoever, and they bring up that like Vince McMahon really undersold how much the fans remember. Like wrestling fans are devoted. Like, I mean, you always have your newer fans who haven't been around as long, they don't remember as much, they don't delve into the history or whatever. You're always going to have that because you're always creating new fans. That's not a bad thing. But
Hmm.
for the fans who have been around, I think I wouldn't say more than any other fandom, but just as much as any of the really, really devoted fandoms like Star Wars or whatever. Wrestling fans love to be rewarded for their memories. They love to be rewarded for remembering continuity. So this kind of stuff right here hit me as like, oh yeah, I get that reference. I know what he's talking about. Love that stuff. Give me more of that stuff. Um, but yeah, he comes in and he's putting over Private Part. That's another great thing about MVP. He's a great mouthpiece because he knows, like any good heel manager knows, you don't bury your babyface opponents. You put them over, and then put your guys over is better because beating a nobody serves nobody.
Hmm.
You beat somebody, you become somebody. You are somebody. So you put over Private Party. You guys are great. You guys are great. But we're coming after your tag belts. I don't know why they gave that to Bobby Lashley, black hole of charisma that he is. I don't know why they didn't just have MVP say it. Even Shelton, who isn't the greatest talker either, would have been better to deliver that line than Bobby Lashley. But they gave it to Bobby Lashley because he's the big mean one. So, like, but yeah, they come out. Bobby was dressed to wrestle because he had a match with Mark Briscoe next. The match was okay. I'll say it was better. I think it was better than Lashley's match with Swerve because at least Mark got a little bit more offense in. It was a little bit more even. Briscoe obviously has that unhinged, crazy kind of thing that he does where he's kind of unpredictable. Um, so I mean, he was the one. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that he was going to be the one to get the pin on Fletcher in the Continental Classic, the
Oh
first guy
no.
to pin him. I don't think anybody pegged him for it, but he worked. That unpredictability surrounding Mark Briscoe is such a boon for him. It serves him so well. But yeah, he gets a sliding Larry, he gets a froggy bow. Lashley kicks out at one. I don't know how I feel about it, but the crowd was like, oh crap. And then Briscoe got murdered. So you got that spear, you got the Dominator, you passed out to the Hurt Lock. I mean, whether you like Bobby Lashley or not, I could take him or leave him personally. But they are making the man look very good. They are pushing him very strongly. They're pushing the whole Hurt Syndicate very strongly. And we're going to talk about an aspect of this later in the show. Spoiler alert. Uh, Something that I really, really enjoy that I want to see more of. But yeah, I like this segment too. Casino Gauntlet was next. And honestly, I thought the story that it told was probably one of the better gauntlets. Like like everything had its especially towards the beginning. It kind of tapered off a little at the end, but especially towards the beginning, it was like, okay, number one, we knew was Jay White. Number two, I don't think anybody expected Hangman Page to be number two. It's like, oh, we're getting into it right away, huh? Oh, all
Yeah,
right. And
they
then
just started off hot.
Wheeler Yuta comes out to be the whipping boy of the match. Oh, poor Wheeler. Ever since he committed to being Death Rider, all he does is get his rear head kicked from pillar to post. Oh, he chose the wrong side. Screw Wheeler Yuta. Anyway, um, and then this was great too. I love this stuff. Yuta was Jay and Yuta were down, and number four comes out, and you hear whose house, and Adam Page's eyes. It's like he told a million stories with his face, and then it gets cut off with that crappy ricochet laugh, and I'm like, oh, now that's just a great troll job. You want heel heat, you got heel. Like, okay, real talk, real talk. Okay, this happened during the break, so we haven't had a chance to talk about it on the air. We're not fans of Ricochet the person. Okay, he kind of showed his butt a little bit on the internet in the last 4 weeks. Not really a big fan of him as a person, but that was a great booked troll job. I adored it. I thought it was fantastic. Um, because everybody wanted to Swerve, and that too, it means that Swerve wasn't on the show, which means that he was selling the beating and the scissors that he took from Ricochet last week too. So he wasn't just like, oh, the scissors didn't mean anything. I'm Arn Anderson. Scissors don't mean crap. Uh, but
I made almost
Arn,
the same joke because I skeeted there. God, did I just say skeeted? Oh, no, I didn't.
oh
Uh,
no,
um,
oh no, they got you.
I posted on Blue Sky that that not since Arn and Sid have scissors been used so effectively in wrestling,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
true. That's
it's true.
like, I'm
I thought
sorry.
that was a strong segment. I thought that really, really established Ricochet as somebody that wasn't just a flippy, annoying guy, but also a threat. Like I'm not a big fan of him endorsing Andrew Tate. I'm not a big fan of him hanging out with people who should not be around 100 feet within a school. But I'm begrudgingly a fan of his booking and this character. Like I think that it's certainly the most personality the dude has ever been allowed to show. Like when you're a small flippy guy, you don't really need much personality because you can do all the stuff that everybody else can't do. That's amazing. It's also always going to get a pop. You don't need to work that hard on your personality. But now he's in the company of the flippy guys who can do all the same stuff that he did because they grew up watching him. So he needs to set himself apart somehow. And this character, I mean, as far as being a heel, it's hitting for me. I don't want to praise him, but fair is fair. And his booking since with the heel turn has been really good. I feel. Um, from there, a whole bunch of great, whole bunch of big names in this. Adam Cole was in here. Uh, Freaking, I mean, all the Undisputed Kingdom, really, except the actual Kingdom, was in there. Um, Powerhouse Hobbs comes in. What's his face? Murder Hawk Monster comes in. Like he was just throwing dudes around.
They played catch with Wheeler Yuta for like 15
Yeah, yeah. They just yeeted him across the ring.
I laughed so hard at that,
It
dude.
was,
Like I laughed so hard at that.
it's so satisfying when it's Wheeler because he chose the wrong side and he's paying for it. It's nice to see karma kind of enact itself. Uh, but yeah, finish comes when, of all people, Kyle O'Reilly gets spine busted and pinned by Powerhouse Hobbs. I don't think anybody had that in the cards. That's fantastic. Good for Hobbs. Dude has been killing it since he came back. He's gonna kill it later in this podcast when I talk about Collision. Um, no, dude, it may not have been anybody's first, second, or maybe even 10th choice, but I mean, I think he's making the most of his opportunity here. He looked great. He's over as a mean baby face. He's getting kind of. I think he's the only one. I think they've now instead of chanting meat at any big hoss, they're only chanting meat for Hobbs. So it is now Hobbs's thing. So I would adopt that wholeheartedly. Take it on. I think he's going to embrace it with open, big, meaty man arms, and he's just going to make it his own now that Miro is nowhere to be found and hasn't been for a year. So
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because it
I
was that
loved it.
match that, yeah, I'm big fan of this. I mean, he's not going to win. He's not going
I
to win
don't
though.
think so either.
But I mean, he had a fantastic match with Takeshita at World's End. Like I mean, Hobbs has always been a blue chipper, but man, and you know, Takeshita can have a good match with a mop. Even after it's been through the wood chipper when Raven put it through there. But fact of the matter is, like Hobbs is, he's on the rise, and I'm glad for it.
Yeah, me too.
Jeff Jarrett was also a participant in there, but for some reason, Yuta decided he was important enough to attack on the ramp.
Yeah,
Like he's just Jeff Jarrett, man. He's not going to win this thing. He's an old man. Why are you like? I know you're a heel, and he's the only one that you could conceivably beat up in this match because everybody hates you and everybody's targeting you, Willer Yuta.
I
And
don't
so
think that
that
Jeff
just makes me
Jarrett
very
is conceivably beat up by Yuta. Um,
well.
Yuta's
I
still
mean,
very little.
he could be stretched. He could be
Yeah,
stretched by Yuta, but that's not what
maybe.
happened. He was chased
No.
off by Yuta, and he only returned after the finish. And that's where MJF comes in, and he's. I do like what MJF said that, oh, I want my Triple B back, but it looks like a lot of work. Like that's very him. It's like his whole character is he's a smarmy prick who could conceivably be one of the best of all time, but he's too lazy. Like that's why he's booked so infrequently in the ring is not because he can't go, it's because it enhances his character
hmm
to not wrestle. You want to see him get his rear end handed to him, and it doesn't happen often enough for your liking because he's not booked to wrestle that often because that's part of his character. It's kind of brilliant, actually. And it's going to be smart for him in the long run, too, because he's not putting his body through the wear and tear that these other guys are. And he's managed to do it in the service of his character and make it work. He's a
Yeah.
really, really smart guy for that. But yeah, he basically had a segment with Jarrett in the ring where he's like, "Oh, I could help you. I know, I could help you win it. You just give me the mat, you know, the first title shot when you do." And Jarrett rebukes him and is like, you know, shove off. So it looks like they're going for a weird feud between MJF and Jeff Jarrett of all people.
Dude, I mean, as much as I don't really want to see him on TV that much because of his age, and Jeff Jarrett is a valuable resource to be at AEW just because of his depth of wrestling knowledge. I mean, it's good to have him there. Okay.
I would rather
Um,
he stay backstage.
I would rather he stay backstage, but
Yeah.
if for lack of a better option to give, because a lot of other people who would be a good option to put in the ring with MJF are in other story like that would be at the level that they need to be. Because I mean, Jeff Jarrett, whether we like it or not, is a legendary name in wrestling. So
Yeah.
he's able to serve in an area where we don't really have a lot for MJF right now because almost everybody else in the main event scene is tied up in either the Death Riders thing or the Hurt Syndicate thing, or Hangman and Swerve. Because of that, there's just not a lot to give MJF right now unless we inserted him into one of those things. So what
Honestly,
we
it would not surprise me if MJF's requested this specifically to work with Jeff Jarrett, knowing the student of the game that MJF is.
yeah, I mean, I would love to work a classic Memphis wrestler if I were a young 20-something wrestler today, and there's not
Yeah.
a whole lot of classic Memphis wrestlers still active. I think Jeff Jarrett might be the only one actually
Oh boy.
that actually is in the ring and is physically fit and is
Yeah.
working at a high level and is a solid hand in the ring.
Mm.
So this is a great. I think for
It's
where
a nice
AEW
little
is with all the
distraction
other
for him,
stuff. Yeah, it's good for
I
MJF because
guess.
he'll learn some. He'll learn in the ring from Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
But he it also, if they're going to work together, he's going to sit down and get to pick his brain for a little while. And I would love MJF to employ some of the Jeff Jarrett chicken shit heel tactics.
Yeah.
It would work. It would work really good, and he would do them really well too.
Yeah.
Like not the corny way that Jeff Jarrett sometimes did, in his day. But I think this is a good matchup because it's a good learning experience for MJF, but also it's a good way to kind of reward Jeff Jarrett for what he's doing because he
Yep.
has
Yeah.
been the company has been impacted positively by him. since his
Yeah,
arrival. So
I get. I mean, in a backstage capacity, yeah, I think so. I don't know what he adds on screen personally. Not, it doesn't hit for me. My buddy
there were
Ben is
times
very
when
much
it's,
different, but
hey, maybe me and Ben get along because
I bet you would.
because I mean, there were times when we needed a super annoying heel, and Jeff Jarrett and his faction provided exactly what we needed in that case. I
I
also
will
really liked
say,
the Mark Briscoe not knowing, like, the turning on Jay Lethal and like that whole thing. I really was entertained by that whole thing with Mark Briscoe's interaction with them, even though I didn't really want it to happen in the first place. It turned out to be
yeah,
entertaining, so
I
I'll give
I'll
him
say this: if we get MJF dressing up like with the straps, like Jeff Jarrett circa 1995, with the weirdness, the strappy gear. I think this will all be worth it because that is a hilarious image
they're going to
in
be
my mind.
Burberry straps too.
Oh, of course they will. Of course they
Oh,
will.
oh.
They'll be plaid, and it'll be great. It'll be great.
That's one of
It'll be
my
a
favorite
Burberry
things I got for
cowboy hat,
Christmas.
Burberry cowboy hat, right? Yep.
I should be wearing it
From
now, but that's my favorite thing I got for Christmas was I got this Burberry scarf, and I wear it fucking everywhere. And for some reason, I'm not wearing it right now.
ah, missed opportunity. Next up, Copeland, who's going by Cope now. Like I feel like that's okay. Let's be real here. Edge was a dumb name. Edge was a dumb name. We just got used to calling him that because wrestling's full of weird stuff, and you just get used to it after a while. Um, that being said, I hope that Cope. I prefer Cope more as a nickname than as a. This is his name now. Like,
Yeah.
eh. The only thing I hope is that he brings back the crooked sharpshooter hold that he used once upon a time and calls it the Cope and Seed. And I want that's what I want. I because
Okay.
I mean that's current. That's with it. That's trendy and hip and it's what you kids say, right? Uh, but yeah, he comes out and he explains that I don't care about anything else that you did, but you attacked my boys FTR. I don't know if you knew that we're super close or whatever, but that's not happening. So I came back, and I'm not like anybody else. You've blah 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 blah. It was kind of it explained it, but it wasn't like super duper interesting, whatever. Um, Death Riders come in and they kind of come in waves, which was kind of smart. I thought it was like, okay, well, you think it's only a couple of us, so we weed out, so we get FTR to come out like and that's when Moxley comes in. Shafir and Moxley come in at the very end when they don't think that the rest that when they think they've seen everybody, they haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's like I'm one step ahead because I've got FTR. No, you're two steps behind because I anticipated that and I'm setting this traffic. So it established them as smart. Uh, Moxley chokes him out with the bulldog choke, and then he grabs a plastic bag because that's what he does to people that he doesn't feel service wrestling anymore. He murders them by asphyxiation. But then Powerhouse Hobbs comes out is the right call because if you've only got a week to establish the guy, you need him in this segment to be seen as a threat. So he comes out, he yeets Yuta into like practically into the stands. He
Mm-hmm.
destroys Pac. He comes in, he targets Mox. Claudio comes in to try to intercept. He eats a spine buster. And while his back is turned, Moxley, who already has a chair, whacks him on the back with it. Hobbs no sells it, turns around, swats it out of his hand, and Moxley powders, hiding behind Shafir on the way out so he can make sure that Hobbs doesn't follow him. That part of the segment I thought was more effective than the promo, personally. Um, I don't dislike Cope. I really don't. But I don't you know, I would say that I would very much like to see him and FTR take the trios title from Death Riders. But I couldn't really. He's treading water trying to get the world title from Mox. Like it's just, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. it's that part's not hitting it for me. That may change. Um, Triple threat for the number one entrant in next week's Casino Gauntlet: Willow Nightingale, Tony Storm, Chris Statlander. I really thought Tony Storm was going to win because they've
I
been
did too.
building her up, building her up, building her up. It makes sense to push her as the opponent, even with this character that she's got where she's like an amnesiac and doesn't realize that she's been there for 3 years, which I think is, uh, God, Tony's a genius. I love her so
Is she
much.
an amnesiac though, or is
Oh no,
this
God, no.
timeless
Oh
Tony
no, no.
Storm
This
playing
this
Tony
is
Storm?
this is timeless Tony Storm's greatest performance ever.
I mean, I think
This is what she's gonna win an Emmy for because it's on TV. It's not in a film. It's an Emmy. So I hate when people say, "Oh, they should win an Oscar for this." It's like it's on TV. It's not a film. It would win an Emmy, dummy.
Adam is so for those of you
I'm
who see
way
this,
over.
Adam is so into this that he slammed his desk so hard that his camera moved.
Yeah, I'm. I I get irrationally upset about it. I apologize, but Tony didn't win, and in fact, she took the pin in this match, which I didn't
Yeah.
say. I did not see that coming at all. Chris picks up the win with the Saturday Night Fever clean as a sheet. Um, she's trying to do some rehabbing of her relationship with Willow. They didn't touch on it as much as I hoped they would in this match, though. It was just kind of a match. Like, it was a
Mhm.
decent match, but it was just kind of a match. Like, they had the fans knew the interactions between Willow and Statlander had history, but like they didn't go out of the performers themselves didn't even really go out of their way to show that like it should have been a bigger deal than it was. And I'm kind of disappointed that it wasn't. It's like this is the first time these two have touched since their crazy street fight from what was it, All Out? Like it
Mhm.
was like that was 6 months ago now almost. Like you know there was last week there was a promo that Stat interrupted from Willow where she's like trying to do right by her and she helped her out when she was getting double teamed by Penelope Ford and Harley Cameron. uh but like there was nothing in this match that an outside observer who didn't have all that prior knowledge, you would just think that they were just people competing in a match, that there wasn't any history, significant history there. There wasn't this big long story that took the better part of a year to tell. Like it was disappointing that they didn't touch on it.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, if I had like one really big complaint about the show, it was that it was like there was the missed opportunity there. I mean, they
Mhm.
didn't even really say too much about it on commentary, which I thought was really strange. Because usually, especially Excalibur is very on top of things when it comes to like explaining story beats. But yeah, like the match was great, but I feel like it was better. It would have been better served if, even if like at the very, if the match had been structured as Tony trying to basically getting involved so that Willow and Stat couldn't really have a one-on-one confrontation until like 5 minutes in, and then you
Mhm.
have like a stare down, and then you have like an emotional moment. I feel like that even that small thing would have been like, oh yeah, this is important beyond just the stakes of this match. Um, but I mean, it is what it is.
Mhm.
Uh, the real story, I think, the story that did get told was Tony has a short interview with Renee afterwards and says that she's not ready yet. Or Tony's like, well, it can't be Tony time all the time. I guess I'm not ready yet. Which is like, I understand that, and it's great character development because nobody expected Tony Storm to lose this, much less get pinned in it. I
Mhm.
think. But the great thing about it is that this kind of match serves two purposes. One, to put somebody over in the process, in this case, Statlander. And
Mhm.
two, that just because you put one person over, that doesn't mean the other two aren't also in that match. So either one of them could win that match and then get themselves over that way. Like
Hmm.
there, it doesn't have to. Jay White was number one in his gauntlet. He didn't win. Just because Stat won this match doesn't mean she's going to win the gauntlet. So there may be hope for Tony yet. I think it's probably the way to go. I mean, it's for the Grand Slam in Australia. You got to have an Australian, as many Australians on that card as possible to sell the seats that are still left. So,
Yeah.
the main event was Kenny Omega coming back, and he talked, he got real about his diverticulitis, about how he would, you know, his doctors told him he might never be able to wrestle again and stuff like that. And considering that he came back and had a very early match of the year contender with Gabe Kidd at Wrestle Kingdom,
It
I'd
was so
say
brutal.
I would say that yeah, Kenny Omega is and can be back.
Hmm.
Um, so what I thought was funny was that like he goes on this thing about how this new version of Kenny Omega, he doesn't want money or power or revenge, and then immediately Don Callis comes out and doesn't get his chance to say three words before Kenny Omega bull rushes him. Doesn't
He
want
just starts
revenge,
beating the
huh?
brakes off him too,
Eh,
man.
Doesn't want revenge, huh? Uh, I mean, they'll probably explain that away by saying, well, I don't want revenge, but if revenge comes breaking my door down, I guess I can meet
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Um, and then he gets beat up and by the rest of the family, well, most of the rest of the Don Callis family anyway. Takeshita isn't there, but Brian Cage is the one. He punches him right in the stomach, right in the the 2 feet of small intestine that he's missing,
Hmm.
and which sets up the match for next week. But of all the people, it's Will. I mean, it makes sense because he's still at war with the Don Callis family. But
Hmm.
considering his history with Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay's the one to make the save. He comes in with the chair, chases everybody off, and then he has a really tense stare down with Omega. But we may be getting some kind of common enemies deal. So
Yeah.
going back to what I said earlier, if like a short term stable of Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, and Buddy Matthews takes shape, then I wouldn't hate that. And I kind of get it. I kind of get it. Overall, it was a really good show. I think it was a step up from last week's show. A couple of disappointing things, but nothing super egregious.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I thought
stuff
it was really
that's, I
good.
mean, yeah, I mean, for a card, see, there's an example of a 2 hour show with only four matches, but it filled the time. I, I, I didn't watch Raw, but it seems like it filled the time a little bit better than Raw did with
Hmm.
wrestling anyway.
Yeah. Yeah,
At
there's
least
definitely
that's
more
the,
wrestling.
yeah, that's the sense I'm getting just from how you described it anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on to the Morton.
Heck yeah. Let's get on to the Morton spot.